Hello and welcome. This is Heavy Business. I'm Aaliyah,
And I'm Curtis.
and we are back with the marvelous Milton Mendonça of ProgPower USA, the reigning champs of, man, some of the sickest lineups I've seen. And the lineup for this year's ProgPower USA is absolutely killer. Um, I'm looking at it again now, and I'm so excited to go to this festival so soon and see so many great bands. But I guess we're just going to talk a little bit today about the legacy of the festival and kind of the path it's been on and where it's going in the future. Um, so we'll just start off by talking about how the festival grew from, or it grew into, a 4-day festival. I'm kind of It's one of the things that it sets it apart, is it's such a long festival, and it spans so many days, and there's so many artists that can be a part of it because of that. Um, what what kind of prompted that growth? And um, well, yeah, and what's the story of how that happened?
So I'm not sure I am the best person to answer that, but I will give you as best as I can because, I like to remind everybody always I came on board as a co promoter of the second night of the festival. It was first and second nights, just second now, uh, 10 years ago. And by the time I did, it was already a 4-night festival. So I think that would be a question best asked to Glenn since he founded the festival and it's essentially his legacy, I should say. But I can speak from my perspective of when I started going as a fan because that's how I started with the show. I started going when I started going back in 2002. There were two official nights of the festival, and there was a pre-party event which was at a smaller venue, like I don't know, not too maybe a mile away from where center stage is. And I specifically remember that night because I was 17 at the time and they didn't let me in the show.
Oh,
Yeah, I
how
was.
far did you traveled from, and only to not be let in?
Well, it was just for the pre-party, not for the festival itself, right?
Right, yeah.
I had come from Connecticut to down to Atlanta. And my birthday was in 2 weeks, so I was hoping, I'm almost 18. I can,
No, they're sticklers, aren't they?
yeah, yeah. So I know there's always been a pre-party, a smaller show kind of thing. And then eventually I remember it got moved to the main stage, and guy named Shane, he was um part of our crew. He was the promoter for that, the pre-party, which eventually got renamed the Showcase, which was, I guess, just an attempt to extend the festival and make it better, right? Bringing it into the main stage and everything. So Shane did that for a few years. Nathan took over eventually. And then, if I remember correctly, they made the Wednesday night into a pre-party show gathering kind of thing. There used to be a metal karaoke, people just got together at the smaller room at center stage. So I guess it gradually evolved into that. My first 2 years, where the Wednesday night upstairs in the smaller room, that's when I was dipping my toes, so to speak, to try to do that. And then eventually I decided to go into the main room, partnering with Nathan. So we did days 1 and 2 for a few years together. And ultimately we chose to go separate ways because I guess we had different visions in terms of what we wanted those nights and the bands and the rosters to be like. And we had a little bit of a difference in terms of how to run the show too. So we're like, no animosity at all. Just let's break it up again. The festival, the brand is more important, is above him and I or our show or anything. So let's just continue to do a killer show, night after night. And as far as Glenn's nights go, I mean, his record speaks for itself. There's a reason why he sells out before any of the other shows, sometimes in hours. The day it goes on sale, it sells out. So um but yeah, it's it's really cool to have 4 nights worth of amazing music, I think, and bands that um you don't really get to see every day. So
Absolutely. What are some things that you're considering when you're putting together your lineup for your days, the day that you put together? Like, how do you put together a show that's cohesive but interesting?
I mean, there's a lot of things that we think about. Glenn and I talk about the lineups for months ahead of even making the first offer. We're just shooting ideas back and forth, but we're always looking at, we keep a very close eye to what's going on in the scene. We keep a very close eye to what's going on in social media pages, Reddit, Discord servers all over. Um, Obviously, always talking to people in the industry as well, managers, bands, agents. We try to look at what's popular right now, what is coming out right now that a year and a half from now will be popular. What Who is on a new cycle of touring, who has a new album coming out, who hasn't been here in a while, um, what albums came out 20 years ago so that we can look at an anniversary show, and so on and so forth. So um, we're always listening to new music. We're always looking for new music and discovering stuff. I'm actually very excited about one of the bands I have booked for next year, because you know I don't know, 80% of our crowd probably doesn't know who they are. And I remember back in 2004, I think, um, Glenn said, we used to have a forum, right? There was no real social media back then. And this is my perspective as a fan. Again, Glenn says, I booked a band that 95% of you guys have never heard of, but 98% will eat that shit up, like think it's the greatest thing ever. Um, and then he booked this band called Circus Maximus. Nobody had ever heard of, and they became an instant favorite at the festival. And they've come back several times and become close friends of the festival and all. And it kind of feels like that when I listen to this particular band's album. So I'm excited about that. I can't wait to see what people think.
I just have a question in regards to that. So you find a band you really think is going to pop off really big, like the one you're talking about right now. You book them. So how does that kind of work trying to get them there? Do you like, how does it work in terms of negotiation? Just say like, you get to play for free? Like, how does it kind of work when you get like one of these new up and comers?
It really depends on the situation. I mean, some bands, no one really plays for free anymore. Um, I don't think anybody, I don't think nobody ever really played for free. Um,
Oh, okay.
there's always, it has to be worth it for everybody. So, it depends on where they're coming from. It depends on, it's hard to tell. Some bands may need visas, some bands don't because they're in the States. And so, usually, you contact the agent or you contact the band directly if they're a smaller band, and you just start talking to them and hope for the best, kind of thing.
Understood.
Are you kind of more, I mean, based on that, my understanding of the goal or initial goal of the festival was to bring bands to the States that people might otherwise not have a chance to see. So does that mean that you're more hesitant to book USA-based bands, even though it might cost you less in visa fees, et cetera, et cetera? It's not really the goal of the festival.
I would say that over the years that has not been as much of an issue. But based on what the goal of the festival, the mission, if you would, at the time that when Glenn established it, we still focus a lot on the bands from overseas. Um, Again, just because what are the odds you're going to see them, right? If they're a smaller band from Poland or from Japan or Australia, um, as opposed to a band that you could go see in Florida, you know? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's not a rule by any means. This band in particular that I was talking about is from the States, you know? So, yeah, it really varies. It depends on who it is.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair. Um, Speaking of smaller USA-based bands, I think there's an interesting story. I had the honor and pleasure of sharing the stage actually with Seven Spires this past weekend. Um, and I know they have a very cool story about how they got the opportunity to play at ProgPower USA the first time. So would you be willing to share that story?
Sure. So I had known the guys in Spires for a little while and always had them on our radar in terms of potential bands for the festival. And we get to Atlanta and it's Wednesday night, and I think it might have been Thursday even. I don't know. Wednesday or Thursday. Glenn pulls me aside and he shares the news that the opening band for Saturday, 3 days away, 2 days away, um, won't be making it anymore. It was a band coming from Australia, and I think one of the guys had a medical issue, um, and meanwhile the other part of the band was en route to the States. So Glenn pulls me aside into the promoter office and we're like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna, can we get anybody in with this short notice? Um, and I know Jack was in Atlanta, Jack Costo from Spires, and I knew Adrienne was going to be attending as well, maybe on the Friday. So immediately I thought of them. I said to Glenn, well, I know Jack from Spires is here. I know the band is based out of Boston at the time, so I know it's a very long shot, but maybe let's see if we can talk to them. So Glenn goes, all right, get him and come to the office, meet me at the office in like 10 minutes. So I messaged Jack, and mind you, this is, I think, the first time he was attending the festival. And I sent him a text message. I'm like, Jack, I need to meet you at the promoter's office within 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And I just remember getting there, and the poor kid's face is like, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? Am I about to get kicked out? I had no idea what was going on. So we bring him inside, we sit him down, we're like, okay, this is the story. This is what's happening. And we'd like to offer Seven Spires a chance to play. Went over details, and I just remember sitting there, and Jack's face was like
That
that's.
looks like Jack's face. Yeah.
And in the meantime, as he's on his way to go to the office, I'm getting Adrienne on the phone, and I'm calling her. I'm like, hey, give me a call back. I really need to talk to you. So she calls me back a couple minutes later. She's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I was in the shower. And so it was completely chaotic, I guess. And yeah, so they talked amongst themselves, and an hour later they had flights booked to come to Atlanta, and they worked out the logistics. I mean, they were troopers. I have never seen a band do that in that short notice, and hit the stage and just own the stage. And it's a big statement to how relevant they've become, how good of a band they've become. They were back last year, and it was also a situation where they were replacing a band that canceled. But this time I gave them a little more time, a little more notice. I gave them like 6 months. And last year, Spires put on a headline set on Thursday. They were just so good. So I'm pretty sure they'll be back at some point. They were phenomenal, and I love those guys, and I wish them the absolute best, and I want to see them at the top of the game. So,
Absolutely, me too. And they're getting there.
yeah.
I think that's just a good lesson to just always be ready to play a show. Like, just
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we weren't really hopeful that they would be able to do it. I mean, they were in Boston, and just imagine having to pull that off within 48 hours. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
right, and they made it work.
They're really exceptional players and musicians all around. So if anyone could do it, they can.
Yeah, yeah, and it's no wonder that Adrian is in Avantasia, and Chris joined Testament, and so on and so forth. So
Curtis, I want to open the floor to you if there's a topic you wanted to dive into from earlier.
Let's dive into something else. So we talked about this briefly last time, but let's kind of go into it again anyways, because most people don't pay attention to everything that we do, so why not? So we should probably talk about your criteria for how you kind of figure out who you're going to book, because we've already talked about a zillion people trying to get in touch with you. I probably bugged you to talk to Aaliyah about 100 times, even though you already talked to her. I'm sure other people do that. I'm just pulling your leg with Aaliyah. I don't think I've ever mentioned you to Milton. But anyways, can you kind of go over the criteria, that type of thing, for the bands that are listening?
in terms of
Like how you how do they?
What's the minimum Spotify listeners?
Yeah, like
Spotify monthly listeners.
what are you looking for, Milton? Like, other than you just got the vibe, you want to go after them type of thing.
I think it goes back to what I was saying before in terms of
do they have to buy you flowers?
No, they don't need to buy us flowers. It's all right.
Okay, damn it, I'll cancel that order.
I think it goes back to what I was saying before. It's a timing thing. It has so many things that we look for. You know what I mean? It has to fit the festival ultimately, right? Even though that has been easier for bands, because it's not a show that is only prog or power metal anymore. Yeah, timing is important. It's so hard to nail down exactly what we're looking for. I think after so many years of doing the festival, I think it's I don't know, what we're looking for is the stuff that we keep booking year after year after year. I don't know how to specify it.
Yeah, how to articulate it.
I wanted the secret sauce.
Right.
It's so mutable. It probably changes year to year.
Let me put it this way. Okay, so just for everybody listening, so obviously you want bands that are going to draw as your main thing, because you need to sell tickets. So what were you saying?
I will say that it can't just be a band that, like, it can't just be, oh, I'm going to book them because they're good.
Of course.
I'm going to book them because I like them.
Of course.
On occasion, that plays a role in it too.
Of course.
Give ourselves that right, I guess, on occasion. At least I do on occasion. I think Glenn does it every year, but he's earned it.
Yep.
It has to. There's got to be a purpose, because there are so many good bands out there, right?
Yep.
If I were to just book good bands, the festival would last 2 months.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there's got to be a purpose. It has to be. There has to be a purpose for everybody.
So let me put it to you this way, because what is the quantity of smaller bands that actually have a shot at getting booked every year? Because you got to have the bigger ones. So I guess that's the way I'm trying to frame it, is like, how many actual smaller bands do you think you guys would squeeze in 1 year?
Depends on how much the big ones cost.
Good answer. On average, though.
It's really hard to tell because we've had. I'll give you an example. Because when a lot of the times when people think of the smaller bands, they'll think of the bands that are opening the show, for instance. And there was a few years ago, when Ross the Boss, formerly Manowar, was one of the night's openers.
Ross the Boss was an opener?
Or opener. I don't like using the term opener. Let me take that back. The first band to play.
Fair.
So it says a lot about a roster, right? When somebody of that caliber has the first slot, and it also has to do with timing and availability, and so it's one of those things that it varies from year to year, and I promise I'm not just hiding, the secret sauce, like you said. It really is. You can't really quantify that, I don't think.
So then let's clarify then one other thing then, and then I'll let Aaliyah take back over here. I know I'm digging in on this hard.
Trying to get all of the secret stuff, huh?
Well, people ask these questions, so it's like we gotta get it spelled out for people here. So it's like, okay, so like, when are you booked right now for next year? I guess would be like, when should bands be contacting you about for a specific year?
We are usually booked 15 to 18 months in advance. So days 2, 3, and 4 for next year are completely booked.
Okay. So
and have been for a little bit now.
Okay, so day 1 would be the only day that anybody might even have a shot at right at this point. Maybe.
Correct.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so that was all I had, Aaliyah.
Maybe you could speak to the reason why the venue hasn't changed for any period of, like, even though the fest sells out days 3 and 4 all the time, the venue hasn't changed. And so do you know what the reasoning is behind staying at the same venue?
Glenn has always said, and again, I go back to my days as a fan, that our focus is quality over quantity. We don't need to increase. We like the fact that the festival is at the venue that it is. Well, first of all, the fact that the festival has been there for so long in the same place automatically makes those people family to us, right? So we wouldn't go anywhere. Those people are very important to us, and to the festival, to our success, I guess. But it's really hard to find a venue that offers that great of infrastructure, quality of the sound. They're always they stay on top of their updates. Especially as of recently, they did a really big update a couple of years ago, and it's just it's wonderful for the type of experience that Glenn sought out to offer. The mingling of bands and artists and everything. It's perfect, and it's no wonder that festivals both outside of the States and in the States have tried to copy it. So.
Can I follow up now, Aaliyah?
Go ahead.
I want to have a different question here. So, okay, so let's just kind of move everything off topic here for just brief. Well, not totally off topic, but okay. So, which bands are you most excited to see this year? Because we need to pump up this year's festival. So let's talk about that for a minute here. Play some favorites. Doesn't have to be your days. Doesn't have to be your days. Could be other days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna speak as a fan, right? I really want to see the first band playing Friday, I believe. A German band called the Cryptex. They're a really cool, very different, kind of crazy prog metal meets Queen meets crazy hard rock, or I don't even know how to describe them. But I'm psyched to see them. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. Um,
I want your top three, buddy. Top three.
I mean, I just saw Camelot 2 nights ago. Love those guys, always have. They were just phenomenal, and excited to see them. I'm excited to see Green Carnation because, again, speaking as a fan of music, they played what's probably my favorite set in the history of ProgPower a few years ago. Um, when they played the Light of Day of Darkness album. Um, Mirath is going to set the place on fire, I know for a fact. Unleash the Archers will be great. The Halo Effect will be great. You're killing me, man.
Well, you
there's.
answered like 6 bands, so that's a good
No,
answer, dude.
because yes. Yeah.
I mean,
I
I
mean-
could keep going. I could keep going.
I mean, you're just going to tell me the whole roster and just tell people just to show up. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. I want to see Doro because Doro always
too.
puts on a great show. Yeah, it'd be hard to.
fair. So let's talk about this from a fan perspective. Aaliyah's going for her first time this year. At least I think it's her first time.
It is, yeah.
So can you kind of walk her through what to expect when she gets there, please?
Yeah. You are gonna be around an audience that's there for the same reason, which is for the festival, for the music. You're probably gonna make a lot of friends. You're probably gonna meet a lot of people that have been coming for 20 years and can preach our gospel, if you would. You're probably gonna have a chance to meet a lot of people in the industry, which is always good. Um, and it's just a fun, good vibe all around. It's not, yeah, I don't know. See, I'm
What
biased.
is the
I'm biased now as a promoter, but I always say that I remember the first time I walked into the venue as a fan when I went for ProgPower in 2002. And again, I spoke about this recently. Um, Everybody has certain events in their lifetime that they can look back and they say, I remember exactly what I was doing when this happened. To me, walking into the venue kind of had that impact on me. I remember who was standing like to my right. And I remember I walked in and one of the guys in Angra just walks across the hall in front of me. And at the time they were the band I wanted to see the most, right? So it was just this there's the vendor room to the left with, tens of thousands of CDs being sold and t-shirts. It was a combination of things that it just it was like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like I immediately felt like I am meant to be there and I want to feel that again year after year after year. And within 10 minutes of being there the first time, I was already thinking how much I wanted to be there the next year. And a lot of people that I've come to know over the years and become friends, or a lot of attendees, they say the same thing. That it's like you get that first, it it just hits you, and you're like, holy crap, where have I been before that I wasn't here? And I think that's part of the reason why people are so passionate about ProgPower. And again, I'm sure Glenn could expand on that so much. But it's the fact that it's special. I don't know how else to put it.
I
So
almost feel like your personal experience as an attendee when you were so young is it's valuable in a way that Glenn's wouldn't be because Glenn organizes the festival and you started it attending as just an attendee. So
right,
you know what that community felt like stepping into it as a total stranger.
correct. So I always say that if I if there are fans coming in for the first time and they have a feeling similar to what I felt the first time I went, then I feel like my job as a promoter of day two, or our job as a crew, as the team behind it, I feel like we did our job. You know, I want to make sure that people experience that kind of sensation, if you would. It's really hard to put into words, you know. And I know it sounds cliche and cheesy and sappy, but it's just what it is. I mean, there was nothing like it in the States at the time. You know, there's still nothing like it in the
I was
States.
going to say there's still nothing like it.
Still nothing absolutely remotely close to it. So it's a shame that there are so many people that are not going to get to experience that for one reason or another. But I hope that more and more continue to.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask Aaliyah, who are you looking forward to?
Oh, Mira.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking forward to everybody, but Mirath is the one that I don't think I'd ever get a chance to see otherwise. And I'm so excited to see them.
If I remember correctly, the first year Mirath played ProgPower, I think their singer arrived in Atlanta from Tunisia 35 minutes before their set time. It was something, yeah, it was a
Holy
combination of
cow.
flights canceled, delays, change. Yeah, it was crazy. And he landed, took took a car to the show, got to the venue, got changed, and went to warm up. It was, yeah, yeah. And then they came back a few years later, and I don't think there was a single person outside during in the hallway during their set. It was just so packed inside the room, and they owned that stage, man. It was no wonder they're headlining, right? So you'd be it's a sight to behold for sure.
I always feel kind of basic by saying the headliner, but I mean, there's a headliner for a reason. So
Yeah, yeah, that is very true.
speaking of there
And I
not
think
being,
it's
oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just gonna say I think it's cool. Another cool thing about Prague Power is that it's probably the only festival that I can think of that can provide that experience. Like Mirath is not really a headliner in the States if they go out on a tour. Um, but it works at our show, right? Because it's a band that grew up with Prague Power in a way. You know, Circus Maximus that I mentioned earlier, it's the same thing. Um, Seventh Wonder was a headliner. You know, I don't think they could headline their own show in Chicago or New York City or
No, no, I
but
don't think so.
yeah, but it works. You know, they're a Prague Power headliner. It works at our festival. So it's um I don't think it's not just I don't know if I would get to see Mirath ever because they could very well open for whoever, you know, and play a 30-minute set on the
Sure, but not a headlining set. You're
not a
right.
headline, 2 hour set kind of thing. So yeah.
And that was so special about I was really happy to see Seven Spires play a headlining set for once.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was awesome. But it is a good point that the power metal community is really sort of small compared to, if you think about the heavier festivals that take place in the USA, you might think of like Incarceration or like Psycho Las Vegas or things like that, where you're going to get more like deathcore, new metal bands, things like that do really well in the States. Something like power metal doesn't have the same kind of universal appeal to it, and it doesn't have the same kind of like level of fan base in the United States. I like to talk about this, and I like to ask people who might know. What do you think are the reasons behind that?
I've been asked that question so many times, and I don't think I've ever really come
Never
down.
found the answer?
Yeah, I never really found the answer. But also because um, when I moved to the States, I was 15 years old, so I already had some fan baggage, if you would. Um,
Your
so
taste had
I
already developed.
A little bit, but I don't really know what the reason behind it was. I don't know if it's maybe culturally, people thought it was cheesy or too happy. I don't know. I mean, if you think about the American bands that were popular, in the '90s, were more like aggressive. There's a distinct American sound, American metal sound. Like I think of
Yes.
Metallica is very different than Creator, for instance, and they're both back then considered thrash metal bands, right? Um, Pantera was another one that comes to my mind. So I think maybe culturally, metal over here evolved into something that's a little more aggressive and heavier, and uh, whereas Europe also, all of the big classical composers come from Europe, right? So it kind of makes sense that a style of heavy music uses more of those European classical influences. Um, yeah,
Sure.
I don't know.
Then I think that, there could be there could be more smaller festivals that celebrate this kind of music. But I know there's a lot of logistical complications. So what do you think are some of the main sort of logistical complications that hold people back from maybe organizing their own little festival in their state,
Money, other than money.
I
other
was
than money,
I
I
was gonna
guess?
say
Yeah.
money and solid mental health.
And super
um,
necessary for the chaotic
um,
world.
well, I was gonna say if you're not putting together a festival, that means you're doing good. you know, no, but joking aside, I think money and obviously is, but also just knowing what you're doing and having the right contacts, and it it's not just something that anybody can get up and say, well, I'm gonna start doing this now, you know although it's kind of how Glenn started. um but um yeah, I think, I don't know, I think it's a big risk from a financial perspective, from also from a reputation perspective. I guess I don't think anybody wants to try something and all of a sudden it fails miserably, and then they can't put their face outside of their home, kind of thing. um but then there's also, like I said, the knowledge behind it. How are you going to get those bands here? How do you go about putting on a show like this? So I'm just privileged and lucky that I learned that from probably the best source there was, which is Glenn. I always say that he's a mentor for me in terms of learning what to do and how to do it. Even today, 10 years into me as a co-promoter of you know the festival, I catch myself asking him simple stuff, or on occasion I get a "you should be doing this instead," text message kind of thing. uh, and you can't take that for granted. I feel like the moment you think you know everything and you're perfect at everything, that's when you make a mistake, and that's when it can become very costly. With that said, our crew is amazing. Our team is amazing, and I think we're a very well-oiled machine, as a lot of people say. Um, and it all goes back to Glenn, you know, turning a vision into something just amazing. So, yeah, just glad to be a part of it.
I know we're almost out of time, but I want to quickly
I was going to
just
say, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to quickly ask a question because last week I went to the Gojira Mastodon Lorna Shore show. A little bit of a weird matchup. Just kind of want to get a concert promoter's viewpoint on a weird mashup like that, and what would be the pros and cons of doing that.
I
Because
don't
Lorna
think
Shore is weird with those two, I got to say.
I don't think that's weird.
No?
I don't think so. Gojira and Mastodon, especially, I think that's a very, very strong pairing together.
Okay, tell me the think behind this then, because I don't get it.
You mean with Lorna Shore specifically?
Yeah, like something like that, like a deathcore band with two proggy.
I think you have to keep in mind how quickly they blew up last year,
Mhm.
because of one song, of one single that had people from every like every style. I remember getting reactions from fans of every style of metal, every style of rock. People who do the reaction videos to like pop albums were watching that, and they were like, this is incredible. Just because I feel like um I forget the vocalist's name, but you know,
Will.
that
Will Ramos.
Will Ramos, I think obviously he has something special there, you know. And I don't know if you've ever had a chance to watch his interviews or to meet him. He is such a likable guy. You know, you just get such a great vibe from watching him talk. And then you listen to his music, and it's like it's coming from the seventh circle of hell. Um, you know, hell, if Lorna Shore was ever offered to ProgPower, I'd be like, I'm kind of tempted, you know, uh, just because it's also they are super talented at what they do. So yeah, I don't know if I think that's too weird of a pairing. I think it makes perfect sense, and it kind of makes me think of you guys know the band Polyphia?
Yes.
It's kind of like
Yes.
them in the sense that, you know, they're super progressive music, right? But I also have friends who are like in their early 20s, and they've never heard a metal record in their lives, and they adore Polyphia. You know, and I can't really understand why. I love it. I love that band. They had my favorite album of last year, but it's kind of like that. It's a band that they're super talented, and somehow they transcend the boundary of styles, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my
It was probably the most well thought out answer on the fly that I think I would have ever imagined. So I'm satisfied.
that's awesome. Good, good.
To wrap things up, I do want to address the elephant in the room that days 3 and 4 are already sold out for ProgPower USA. What should people be like? How can people get tickets for those days still? Because I see some people posting their tickets in groups on social media. Is that something that can, I mean, I'm sure that can go wrong in so many ways. So, do you have any advice for
So
people?
we definitely there are a couple of Frog Power fan communities, like groups on Facebook, that we're not officially associated with them in any capacity, but it's a way for some people who can't make it anymore to try to sell their tickets, and people who are trying to go um, try to get them. I know I know nobody wants to hear this, but there's always a chance you can find somebody there with extra tickets. But you know, for people who are traveling for it, it's a risk, obviously. And we noticed over, you know, this year more than ever, the amount of scammers on Facebook saying, I have 2 tickets, message me. I actually remember announcing that the tickets were going on sale a week later, and then just the thread getting flooded with people saying, I have 2 tickets, I can't make it anymore. And I'm like, they're not even on sale yet.
Funny story. My band posted about the festival we played last weekend, and it's over, right? As
Uh-huh.
we're posting about playing it. And there
Right.
was someone in the comments saying, I have 2 tickets. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, you gotta watch for it because it's just awful. It's just hard
Yeah,
how
but
much of it
maybe people could buy tickets to days 1 and 2, and then they
people can
could get
definitely buy tickets for days 1 and 2, and hopefully and maybe tickets for day 2 are not going to be around for much longer because we're definitely way under 100 tickets left for that particular night.
Ooh,
So yeah.
wait, let me run through this lineup really quick. You got 7 Kingdoms, 0 Hour, The Halo Effect, Vola, Beast in Black. That
Yep.
lineup is Thursday, September 7th. So if you're interested in that lineup, get your tickets now. We will put the link in the episode description.
Right.
And then day 1 is, let's scroll down here, The Reticent, Elven King, Cynic, Swallow the Sun, and Doro. So I will be
Tickets
happily
available
there.
for day 1 as well. So
Yes. Yeah, so I will be very excited to attend all days of the festival. And
yeah.
I hope that everyone listening will also, if you want to go, definitely make that step. Make this the year that you go. I put it off for too long.
Yeah. All good things come to an end, right? So
Right.
it happened.
Anything else you want to say about the fest before I close this out, Milton?
I On a personal note, I'm just so happy and so grateful to be a part of it. Like I said, it's for somebody that started attending as a fan to have a little bit of a mark in the history of it is just amazing. I'm so privileged to do this. And don't get me wrong, it's stressful, and there are days that I tell myself I never want to do this again. But um, then you get there and everything goes off, and you see the bands, and it's like it's such a great feeling. So I'm just lucky, and I have Glenn to thank for that, and the rest of our crew and all of those bands and people we worked with, and the fans, of course, that keep us busy, keep us doing it again and again. So yeah, but it's a special festival, and I think everybody should experience it, including you, Curtis.
Canadians aren't allowed to come. Okay.
Unleash the Archers is there,
Yeah.
so
Next year.
all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. And everyone listening, thank you for listening. And until next time, make like a bull and throw those horns up.